The tractor was blocking the road at 8:14 on a Friday morning, and Claire Sutton had a conference call at 8:30 that she was not going to miss. She had been driving the county road for 11 minutes already, which was 9 minutes longer than her assistant estimated when she typed the address into the navigation the night before. The road was unpaved for the last 2 miles. Her rental car, a black SUV that the agency had categorized as full-size and that was now wearing a thin coat of ochre dust on every panel, had not been designed with this in mind. The tractor was old, visibly, specifically, unapologetically old. Green paint worn to something closer to gray in patches. A cracked side mirror that had been replaced with a mirror from a different machine, slightly smaller, angled, not quite right. It was moving at the speed of something that understood it had all the time it needed, pulling a trailer loaded with hay bales, stacked 4 high, taking up the full width of the road in the way that large, slow things do when there is nowhere else for them to be. She pressed the horn once, then again longer. The tractor did not speed up. She pressed again. The tractor pulled to the edge of the road, not fully off, just enough to offer a gap, and she squeezed past it in the way that required her to believe the SUV was narrower than it actually was. As she came level with the cab, she looked up. The man driving was looking straight ahead. He had a worn canvas jacket, the kind that had been washed too many times to hold a shape anymore. A hat with a feed store logo that had been in the sun long enough to lose its color. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the road ahead like it was the only thing worth looking at. She got past and accelerated. In her rearview mirror, the tractor returned to the center of the road and continued at the same pace it had always been going. Locals, she said to no one, and checked the time, and drove. She made the call from the gravel lot of the Saddleback Creek Resort, which was the property her company, Sutton Meridian Development, was here to assess for acquisition. The call lasted 22 minutes. She was precise and efficient, and answered every question without needing to check anything, which was a thing she had trained herself to do, and which still occasionally surprised people on the other end of the line. She had been assessing rural resort properties for acquisition for 6 years. She had closed 14 deals in that time, most of them in the range of 12 to 20 million, 2 in the range of 30. She moved fast, she moved clean, and she understood land value in the specific way that comes from understanding the land itself, rather than just the numbers attached to it. Saddleback Creek had been on her desk for 3 weeks. The resort was 22 acres, water access, established income from cabin rentals and event hosting, a main lodge that needed significant renovation but had good bones. The asking price was $11 million. Her interest was not in the resort itself. It was in the 214 acres adjacent to it, undeveloped land, privately held, no public listing, no obvious owner of record when she had looked. Her land analyst had found the parcel registered to a trust. The trust had a name that told her nothing, and a registered agent whose address was a legal firm in Austin. She had not been able to identify the actual owner. If she could acquire the resort and the adjacent parcel together, the development potential was significant. A luxury destination property, that land, that water, that elevation. She had run the numbers 3 different ways, and the number kept landing somewhere above 90 million. Built out. She needed to know who owned the land next door. She did not know yet that she had driven past him on the county road at 8:14, 8 minutes before she made the call. Stay with this story until the end. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this one travels. Jesse Callahan had been waking up at 5:30 for as long as he could remember, because the ranch required it, and because the ranch had been requiring it of him since he was 8 years old. Helping his grandfather with the morning rounds, and had never asked anything different of him since. He was 39. He had been running Callahan Ranch alone for 5 years, since his father had stepped back from the day-to-day, and in full ownership for 3 years, since his father passed. The ranch was 847 acres of hill country land in the Texas county south of Fredericksburg. Grass and cedar and creek bottom and open sky and the specific quality of early morning light that landed on that land in a way Jesse had never been able to describe to anyone who hadn't seen it and had stopped trying. He ran cattle, some row crop on the creek bottom, and a small pecan operation in the East Grove, that his grandfather had planted in the 1960s, and that now produced more than any of them had projected. He had 12 employees, 4 of them full-time, and a relationship with every piece of the land that was less like ownership and more like the relationship a person has with something they are responsible for and grateful to in roughly equal measure. His daughter May was 6. She had been born during the coldest week of the previous decade, which she considered a personal achievement, and referenced with some regularity. She had her grandfather's eyes, and her mother's stubbornness, and her own specific quality of attention that had been apparent since she was very small. She watched things until she understood them, and she did not pretend to understand them before that. May's mother had left when May was 2. This was a fact of their life that Jesse had handled the way he handled most hard facts directly, without theater, with the specific focus of someone who understands that the ground you're standing on is the ground you have to work with. He had never said anything to May about her mother that was not true, and he had never said anything that was more than she needed to know at the age she was at. May was currently in the kitchen eating biscuits with honey, which was what she ate every Friday morning, because Friday was the day Dolores, who had been cooking for the ranch since before Jesse was born, made biscuits. May had a rule about Dolores's biscuits. They were not to be rushed, commented on critically, or eaten standing up. She had communicated this rule when she was 4, and it had been respected without exception since. Jesse came in from the first round at 7:50, hat in hand, and poured himself coffee from the pot that was always on and sat across from May without speaking because she was still in the biscuit portion of her morning, and the biscuit portion was not for conversation. After a moment, she said, without looking up, "Someone honked at you." "Yep." "On the county road." "Yep." "Black car." "Rental." She looked up. "How do you know it was a rental?" "Sticker on the bumper. Enterprise." And the dust bothered her more than it should have. May looked back at her biscuit. "She's going to Saddleback Creek." He looked at her. "What makes you say that?" "That's the only thing down that road that someone in a black rental car would be going to." He drank his coffee. "Are they buying it?" she said. "Don't know. If they buy it, they'll want our land." He looked at her. She was 6 years old and was applying honey to her biscuit with the care of someone who understood that the distribution mattered. "Probably," he said. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing yet," she nodded. This seemed correct to her. She had learned from watching her father that the right response to most things that were still forming was to let them form a little further before deciding. "She honked 3 times," May said. "Twice. 3. I was counting." He drank his coffee and did not argue. Jesse's ownership of the adjacent parcel was not a secret. Exactly. It was held in the Callahan family trust, which was a standard estate planning structure his father's attorney had set up 20 years ago, and which had never been relevant enough to anyone outside the family to explain. The parcel had been his grandfather's original acquisition in 1958, before the main ranch land, and it sat between the ranch and the Saddleback Creek Resort property line in a way that made it, to anyone who understood this land, the most important piece of land in the county. Jesse knew what it was worth. He had received 3 FI offer in it in the past 4 years. He had declined all 3. He had reasons for this that were not complicated and not romantic. He simply had not been persuaded that any of the 3 buyers understood what they were asking for, and he did not sell things to people who did not understand what they were asking for. He went back out at 8. He had hay to move, a fence section on the north boundary that needed attention, and the pecan grove required a walk to check moisture levels after the dry week they had. The tractor was the right tool for the morning, and the county road was the right road. He was not going to drive differently because someone in a rental car was in a hurry to get somewhere. He had not looked at her when she passed. He had, from the corner of his eye, seen the expression on her face. He finished the hay delivery by 10, came back down the county road, at a pace that was appropriate for the county road, and pulled the tractor back into the equipment barn. He was washing up at the barn sink when Dolores appeared at the barn door and said that there was a woman from the resort at the main gate asking if she could speak to the property owner. He dried his hands. What does she want? She said she had some questions about the adjacent parcel. He looked at his hands. He looked at the barn door. "Tell her she can come up to the house," he said. Claire Sutton had spent 40 minutes at Saddleback Creek. with the resort's listing broker, a man named Phil who was knowledgeable and thorough, and whose listing packet contained everything she needed on the resort itself, and almost nothing on the adjacent parcel. She had asked about it directly. Callahan Family Trust, Phil said. I know the family. Jesse Callahan owns it. He's the rancher next door. He paused. He's declined to sell on multiple occasions. Has he received a serious offer? He's received 3. All what I'd consider serious. What were the terms? Phil told her the terms. She looked at the numbers. They were reasonable numbers. Not exceptional, but reasonable. What does he want for it? She said. He hasn't said he wants anything for it. He's said he's not interested in selling. She looked at the parcel on the survey map. 214 acres. Creek frontage on the southern edge. Elevation on the northern end that looked across the valley in a way that the aerial photographs had not fully communicated. She looked at it the way she looked at all land, with the specific attention of someone who understood what it was before she tried to understand what it could be. I'd like to speak with him, she said. Phil looked uncertain. I can make a call. He's not always. He chose his words carefully. He's particular about his time. I'll drive to the gate, she said. Phil looked more uncertain. I'd recommend letting me call first. She was already picking up her portfolio. She drove the county road back north, the same road she had driven that morning, and found the entrance to Callahan Ranch. A simple iron gate, no sign, a cattle guard across the entrance, and a gravel road that wound up through cedar toward a low ridge. She stopped at the gate. There was an intercom post. She pressed the button. A woman's voice answered. She explained who she was and what she was looking for. The woman on the intercom told her to wait. She waited for 90 seconds. The gate opened. The house was not what she expected. She had expected something that matched the tractor. Old, functional, past its best presentation. What she drove up to was a long, low structure that sat into the hillside rather than on top of it. Stone and timber, wide porches on 3 sides, the kind of building that had been made by someone who understood the land it was sitting on and had built it to belong there rather than to announce itself. It was not a new house. It was a house that had been added to carefully across several generations in a way that the additions were only visible if you looked for them. She parked and got out. A man was coming around the side of the house from the direction of a barn that she could see in the distance. Canvas jacket, feed store hat, the same man from the tractor. She did not let her expression change. He came across the yard without hurrying and stopped at a distance that was conversational and said, "You're from Saddleback Creek." Claire Sutton, Sutton Meridian Development. He did not offer his hand immediately. He looked at her with the particular quality of attention she had noticed in the way he'd driven the tractor, complete, unhurried, not performing anything. Jess Callahan, I know. She shifted the portfolio. I'd like to talk to you about the adjacent parcel. Come in, he said. The interior of the house had the same quality as the exterior, built by someone who had thought about function before appearance and had found that the two things were not as different as people sometimes claimed. The kitchen was large. A girl was at the kitchen table with a book and a glass of milk and looked up when they came in with the direct attention of someone who had been expecting this. May, Jesse said, this is Miss Sutton. She's going to sit at the table for a few minutes. May looked at Claire. You honked at the tractor. Claire looked at Jesse. Jesse said nothing. It was blocking the road, Claire said. It was on the road, May said. Blocking would mean it wasn't supposed to be there. Claire looked at the 6-year-old. The 6-year-old looked back with the expression of someone who had made a factual point and was giving the other party time to consider it. Fair distinction, Claire said. May returned to her book. They sat at the kitchen table. Dolores brought coffee without being asked. Claire set the portfolio on the table and began with the professional structures she used for every initial conversation. The project overview, the development concept, the comp analysis, the offer framework she was prepared to discuss. Jesse listened. He sat with his coffee, and he listened the way he drove the tractor, with a quality of attention that gave nothing back while she was talking. He did not nod or make sounds of agreement or lean forward at any particular point. He listened to all of it. When she finished, he said, "What do you know about the creek?" She looked at the portfolio. Creek frontage on the southern edge. Approximately 1,800 linear feet. What do you know about the creek? She understood that he was asking something different. She looked at him. Tell me, that creek runs year-round, which is not common in this county. It feeds from a spring on our north boundary that has run continuously for as long as anyone in the county has recorded anything. The creek bottom on that parcel is pecan and live oak that's between 80 and 120 years old. There's a pool on the southern end, deep enough that it doesn't go below 5 feet, even in the worst drought year on record, which was 2011. The land around that pool has never been broken. He paused. What you're describing building on that parcel, what would happen to the creek bottom? She looked at the development concept in the portfolio. The rendering her team had produced showed the main lodge structure positioned on the northern elevation, with access roads cutting through the middle of the parcel. She was quiet for a moment. The access road would require grading through part of the bottom. Which part? She looked at the rendering. She looked at where the access road ran. She looked at the survey map underneath the rendering. She cross-referenced the creek line. She set the portfolio down. The pool, she said. The access road as drawn runs 40 feet east of the pool. At that grade, with the drainage pattern on that land, you'd divert the surface flow within 2 seasons. The pool would be gone in 3 years. The creek bottom would go dry in the southern section within 5. She looked at him. You've had this conversation before, 3 times. She looked at the rendering. The development concept that had produced 90+ million in projected value on paper was built on a road that ran 40 feet from something irreplaceable. She had not known this. Her team had not known this. The aerial photographs had shown the creek line. Nobody had known what the creek was. What would have to change, she said. He looked at her. This was not what the previous 3 people had said. The previous 3 had either argued or left. The access road moves to the western ridge, he said. It's a longer route. It costs more to build. But the grade works and it keeps the entire creek bottom intact. She looked at the survey map. She traced the western ridge. He was right. The grade worked. The road would be nearly a quarter mile longer. The construction cost differential was significant. What else? She said. The southern 48, the creek bottom, and the pool, those stay undeveloped. Permanently. Not a conservation easement that can be renegotiated. Permanently undeveloped as a condition of any sale. She looked at the 40 acres on the map. She was running the numbers in her head, removing 40 acres from the developable footprint, adding the road cost differential. The number came down. It came down by enough to matter. It did not come down below viable. I need to reconfigure the concept, she said. That takes time. I've got time, he said. I can't give you a revised offer today. I didn't expect one. She looked at him. He was looking at the survey map with the same quality of attention he gave everything. Complete. Without urgency. Why are you talking to me? She said. You turned down 3 offers. The 3 offers were for the land as a number, he said. You're asking about the land. She looked at the portfolio, the rendering that was now wrong. The access road that would have killed the creek. She thought about what it would have looked like in year 3, in year 5. The pool gone, the old trees in a dry bottom. I didn't know about the creek, she said. No, he said. Most people don't until they've walked it. She looked at him. Could I walk it? He was quiet for a moment. May, from behind her book, said, She should walk it, Dad. Jesse looked at his daughter. May turned a page. Tomorrow morning, he said. 6:30. Dress for the terrain. Claire looked at the kitchen, the stone floor, the wide window over the sink, the 6-year-old reading at the table with the glass of milk. 6:30, she said. She was at the gate at 6:28. He was already on the other side of it, in boots and the canvas jacket, with a thermos and a look that registered her arrival, the same way the tractor moved, without particular surprise or particular welcome, just acknowledgement. May was with him. She was wearing a small version of his boots and carrying a notebook with a pencil stuck through the wire binding. When Claire looked at the notebook, May said, I draw the things we find without being asked. They walked for an hour and 40 minutes. Jesse did not narrate the land in the way of someone performing expertise. He named things when they were relevant and was quiet when they were not. He showed her where the spring fed into the system, invisible at the surface, but traceable if you knew how to read the ground. He showed her the pecan grove in the creek bottom, 80, 90 years old, The trunks the size of something from a different era. He showed her the pool. It was exactly what he had described. Still clear, deep green, the old oaks coming over it so that the light arrived in pieces. She stood at the edge of it for a while. May was drawing in the notebook, the pool, the trees, the way the light came through. My grandfather swams in this pool, Jesse said. When he first bought the land, he said it was the reason he bought it. Not the acres. This. Claire looked at the pool. She looked at where the access road would have run on the original concept. 40 feet, in 3 years. The revised concept will take 3 weeks, she said. The numbers will be different. The offer will be lower than what I came here with. I know, he said. I want to be direct with you. Even with the revised concept, this is a significant development. It will change what this land looks like. The parts that can change, he said. The parts that can't change won't. She looked at him. You've been protecting this land. It doesn't need protecting, he said. It needs someone who understands what it is. She looked at the pool. She looked at the old trees. She looked at the notebook in May's hands. The drawing taking shape, the pool in the light, specific and careful. What does she see? Claire said. Everything, Jesse said. She draws it so she remembers it exactly. Claire looked at the drawing. May looked up. You can look, May said. She held the notebook out. The drawing was precise in the way that children's drawings are precise. When the child is drawing something they actually care about, not stylized, not simplified, but observed. The pool was there. The trees were there. The angle of the light was there. Claire looked at it for a long time. She handed it back. Thank you, she said. May looked at her with the direct assessment she had used since the kitchen. Then she said, You're different than you were yesterday. Claire looked at her. What do you mean? Yesterday you honked at the tractor. Today you stood at the pool for 4 minutes without saying anything. Claire held the girl's look. She did not have an answer that improved on what May had just said. Jesse was looking at the pool. I'll have the revised concept to you in 3 weeks, Claire said. I'll be here, he said. The revised concept took 22 days. She sent it on a Tuesday morning with a note that was 3 sentences. The concept was enclosed. The offer was on the last page. The access road ran the western ridge, and the southern 40 acres were permanently protected as a condition of sale with no renegotiation clause. Jesse read it at the kitchen table, with May doing homework across from him. He read it twice. He read the condition on the southern 40 a third time. He looked at the revised site plan, the access road on the western ridge, the creek bottom intact, the pool intact. He looked at the offer. He had been offered more for this land. The 3 prior offers had all been higher. He set the document on the table and looked out the window at the ranch. May looked up from her homework. What does it say? She moved the road. May looked at him. And the pool. The pool stays. May looked back at her homework. Then you should probably say yes, she said, as if this had always been the obvious conclusion, and they were simply arriving at it. He called his attorney. He called the registered agent of the trust. He called Phil at the resort, listing to tell him the adjacent parcel was under agreement, which Phil received with the expression of a man hearing something he had not believed he would hear. He called Claire. I have one revision, he said. She waited. The protection on the southern 40. I want it deed separately as a conservation parcel, not a condition of the main sale. That way it holds regardless of what happens to the rest of the transaction. A pause. That's actually cleaner, she said. I should have structured it that way. Then yes, he said. A moment of quiet. I'll have the amended documents by end of week, she said. Take your time. A pause. Then she said, I want to ask you something. He waited. When I came through on Friday morning, the tractor. Yes. You knew who I was going to see. May worked it out, yes. Did you know who I was? Not until May told me that evening. She looked you up. A longer pause. She's 6. She's thorough. Something changed in Claire's voice, not dramatically. Just the way a room changes when a window opens. She told you to let me walk the land. She did. Did you already know you were going to? He was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the ranch. The tractor in the equipment barn. The pecan grove visible on the east. The county road running south toward the resort and the rental car dust that had settled 3 weeks ago. No, he said. You asked about the creek. That was new. She was quiet. He could hear, in the quality of the quiet, someone deciding something. When the transaction closes, she said, I'd like to walk the land again, with May if she's willing. Before we break ground, I want to know what we're working with. He looked out the window. She'll be willing. She's been drawing the pool every few days since you left. She says she wants a record of what it looks like before. Before. Before it has more people looking at it. She says things change when people look at them. A pause. She's right about that. She usually is, he said. He ended the call. He set the phone on the table. Outside the window, the light was moving across the ranch in the way it moved at this hour. Specific to this land, the low cedar throwing long shadows toward the east, and the creek bottom glowing somewhere out of sight, with the quality of something that had been here long before him and would be here long after. May came in from outside and went to the counter and poured herself a glass of water and drank half of it and set it down. She said yes, May said. How did you know? Because she asked about the pool. She looked at him. The first time she asked was to understand it. This time she asked to remember it. He looked at her. That's different, she said, with the certainty of someone who had been watching the way things change for 6 years and had gotten very good at reading the difference. She picked up her glass and went back outside, and he listened to the screen door close behind her, and the ranch was quiet in the way that good land is quiet, not empty, just full of things that did not need to announce themselves. If this story's reached you, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And subscribe, because the next story is already written, and it starts exactly where this one left off.